Farm Basics is brought to you by the Liberty Link trait and Liberty herbicide from Bayer. The most reliable weed management solution, Liberty Link and Liberty herbicide are the link to efficient row crop production and sustainable weed management.
During our Farm Basics time today, we want to talk a little about corn standability, because if you're a non-farmer, you've probably been driving down the road seeing some cornfields are standing perfectly straight and nice and tall, and other cornfields, the corn's falling all over. What's the difference?
Well, a lot of times early in harvest, if there are cornfields that are falling all over, the farmer gets out there right away. He doesn't want to take a chance that wind or snow or heavy rains are going to make his corn completely lay on the ground where he just can't even pick it up. So farmers will try to get after those fields early, but there are other fields that are standing perfect. And you say, wow, that field looks like it's ready to go. How come a farmer has left it out there? In some cases, it may be his only field that's standing very well, and that's why he's left it until last.
So what it really comes back to is what the farmer has done in terms of management in the field. Certainly there are differences in varieties. Corn is not just corn. There are different varieties of corn, and certain varieties may put a little more effort into the stalk quality than other varieties. So there will be a little bit of difference there. The number one difference we see in most farms is fertility. If one farmer in his particular field has ample fertility and the right balance of fertility, including things like sulfur and micronutrients, he will most likely have a better stand. In another field, if either that farmer or a different farmer doesn't have the right fertility, he's got a problem. One of the biggest single nutrients that we talk about quite often in terms of stalk quality and stalk size is potassium. Unfortunately, a lot of the potassium that's in most soils is in the form of a rock, so it doesn't do farmers a lot of good until maybe 20 years down the road. That's why farmers have to supplement with a lot of potassium just about every year. On our farm, we spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on potassium every year just to make sure that we've got good support for all our crops.
You know, the food that farmers are putting out there for their plants is very important. But the other side of it, Brian, is sometimes plants become the food, like with corn rootworms, for example. And we've seen this across the country, especially over the last decade. There have been more corn rootworm problems than I've really ever heard about, especially in the northern U.S. But even where there have been corn rootworms for a long time, some of the BT products where there's a protein that takes care of these bugs for us, that's right in the plant, well, we're getting some resistance to that. And there are fewer farmers that are putting out insecticide to try and kill these bugs, or at least there had been for a number of years. So we've got more corn rootworm problems out there. And what they will do in the midsummer is feed on corn roots. And once they chew off a bunch of corn roots, now the plant doesn't have much of an anchor anymore. And in some cases, when you've got fields laying over, the fertility might be right, but they had a bug problem.
Another thing we look at quite often is drainage. Out in the field, if the water table gets too high, in other words, if let's say the water table's at a foot deep or foot and a half deep, all the roots that are deeper than a foot or a foot and a half deep are going to die. They have to have oxygen there. If they literally just have 3 straight days where they have no oxygen, those roots are dead. So all the deep roots are gone. And if that happens, then obviously it's a lot easier for a plant to tip over because it doesn't have the proper bracing. It also doesn't get the proper nutrition and the right amount of water at the right time. So all a farmer's doing when he puts tile out there is just lowering the water table. And it's not lowering it way down deep in the ground. It's just lowering it to say 3 feet, that's it. So there's a little bit of water that gets removed from the soil sometimes in the spring, like on our farm out of these tile lines. But when that happens, then we have a lot better root growth deeper in the soil.
And of course, we are talking about agriculture here, so that means our crops are out there exposed to whatever weather we're going to have. And sometimes there are 70, 80, 90 mile an hour straight winds that come through, and you see almost everyone's corn go down. Sometimes we have those things that pop up. Now you can certainly do everything right, managing insects, managing fertility, managing drainage, those kind of things in your field. And sometimes you'll be fortunate and your crop will stand even in a condition like that, but sometimes that wind is just so extreme. So a lot of times farmers are doing the best job they possibly can, making all the right calls, and they could still have some corn go down.
Yep, they could. Just a couple last things I was going to mention that farmers can control. They can put fungicide out to control diseases. They can address soil pH issues with lime or elemental sulfur, depending on if the pH is low or high. They can address their weed issues. We talked about corn rootworms earlier. There are other bugs that could affect corn too. Compaction. There are just a number of management steps, and if the farmer does all those things right, then like Darren said, the weather gives less of an impact later on.
Well, there are a lot of decisions that farmers have to make, that's for sure. One of those big decisions is controlling our weed of the week. Can you identify this week's weed?